expressed on any program are those of the producers and/or the persons appearing on the program and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of FRC Media, Bristol Community College, or the City of Fall River.
Hello, and welcome to Spindle City Straight Talk. I'm CJ.
And I'm Chip.
And we have a lot of information for you today. As you all know, the recall has been moving forward here in the city, and another 1,600 signatures were turned in to the city clerk's office on Tuesday. That brings the count of signatures that have been turned in to approximately 3,700 signatures. When Liz Camaro was asked, who is the chairwoman of the city's elections commission, we asked how many signatures had already been certified, and she said, "I'm not releasing any numbers until after the deadline date." And right now she has more important priorities, which is the upcoming state primary election on September 9th. So I have to ask myself, if you can't handle this, why aren't you calling out and asking for some help? I did check with the Secretary of State's office first thing this morning in regards to that request for help and what their position would be if the city's election commission said that they're slightly overwhelmed because of the recall and the state primary. And they said that they've received no requests for help, they've received no information that they're overwhelmed, but that if a request was made, they'd be more than happy to offer some suggestions on how to handle this primary, which I found quite helpful and quite informative. Chip.
Well, apparently the city doesn't really want to go there because they may get a suggestion they don't like getting this job done so the people can speak. Actually, on that note, I did speak to a sitting city councilor and a former city councilor about this process, and also because I've participated in this process before with the petition for the removal of the fire chief's position from civil service. I find it rather ironic that now that they're going to wait until the process is complete to give us counts, and yet former city councilor Ray Haig, who is actually part of this administration, he was appointed as Veterans Director by this mayor, I believe, told me that he had an initiative petition placed on a ballot, a non-binding ballot question, and he was given constant updates, and City Councilor Linda Pereira said when she has nomination papers, etc., she's never had any problem, and when we did our petition for the removal of the fire chief, we were able to call periodically and get the number of signatures that was certified. So, as someone once said, there seems to be something rotten in the state of Denmark.
Well, yeah, it's very interesting too because, as you remember, the mayor did state on the radio that he will not see any more than 40% of the signatures certified. And statements like that are just driving people in Fall River to go out and get more and more signatures, so that even with 40% of the signatures certified, you're still going to meet the necessary minimums. But telling the people that really basically says, in my opinion, and again, opinions are like anuses, everyone has one and they all stink, that I don't care what you want, it's what I want. And I think that's the message that has been coming down from the Taj Mahal of Government Center on a regular basis. And I'm using that statement very loosely because it was used yesterday in the elevator with the mayor by a city citizen who turned around and said that to the mayor when he asked for the 6th floor. And he says, well, that's what you call it. Not very good. But I have a question that nobody at this table can answer, but poses some very interesting thoughts to me. Could anyone tell me out there why Congressman David Cicilline from the Rhode Island 1st District was on the 6th floor of Government Center yesterday? And why he, when leaving Government Center, didn't stop to answer any questions. He just kept walking and ignored people. And then, what was he doing here? Since when is Fall River part of the Rhode Island District, or Rhode Island 1st District? And what business could Congressman Cicilline be doing in the city of Fall River? Questioning minds want to know.
Well, I think actually people in the 1st Congressional District of Rhode Island should be asking that question too. Probably they should be informed of that. I think that if their congressman is here, he should be spending his time in his own district. And although, we can speculate that, our mayor has many, many ties in Rhode Island. They did a fundraiser of him in Rhode Island, $500 a plate. So I don't know, maybe he's friendly with the congressman. But, the fact is, we always have to question when high-ranking public officials show up, especially when in a situation where the mayor is facing a recall and there are issues. Maybe he's looking for political advice. Maybe he's looking to run for Congress. Who knows?
Who knows? But a bit of misinformation that came out of the Flanagan camp last night, and again, I should say allegedly, the Flanagan camp, because the mayor keeps disavowing all these statements from the page, no recall, or keep Mayor Flanagan, or whatever they want to call it this time. They say that according to the standards set by the National Fire Protection Agency, or whatever they are. Association. Thank you very much, Chip. You would know them very well. That Fall River exceeds the necessary minimums with our fire complement so far. So the mayor has done a good job there. Chip, I have no clue on that particular bit of information, but I know you are very intimate with that.
Yes. Actually, I've probably got about 40,000 pages of studies from the National Fire Protection Association and other organizations, various fire departments on staffing levels, on manning levels, on fire loss levels with undersized crews, on response times and manning levels. The standard from the National Fire Protection Association is the 1710 standard. That is the most misunderstood, misquoted, and statute I've ever seen. Standard, actually. It's not a law. It's a guideline. And it's a guideline about manning, and it talks about how many people you need at a fire. But the reality is, if you take the time, which I'm sure the people who posted this have never read the National Fire Protection Association handbook, which is about this thick, and I did. It's part of the mandatory study material for lieutenant, captain, and chief, among others. Manning is predicated not only on, there are many factors, response time, number of men, but also it depends on the amount of men present initially within the first parameter of 3 to 5 minutes. And it's also, what's also factored in is the individual community. What these, people, and I'm using that term loosely, don't understand is that obviously crew levels and manning levels are different. There's a specific baseline for a particular fire operation procedure, such as ventilation, hose advancement, etc. But it's predicated on the community, each individual community. The National Fire Protection Association classifies communities and classifies areas within communities. And one of those classifications is considered a high hazard area. And even though the standard is a 4-man crew, which no apparatus in Fall River has for the baseline, and their argument is that they'll get the people there later which, as I've always said, and this is the actual analogy I used before the city council many years ago when I made a presentation on the 1710 standard, is that doesn't really work. I had thousands of pages of studies to show there's more property damage, greater chance of loss of life when they come in piecemeal. The analogy I used was, it's like saying, I want to play a football game against you, and I'm going to start with 11 players, and you can start with 5. And in somewhere within the game, you will ultimately get to 11. Well, guess what? By the time you get to 11, I'm going to be ahead 75-0, and the game's almost going to be over. And that's the same thing with a fire operation. Firefighting is a labor-intensive job. You need people. They have to chop holes. They have to pull ceilings. They have to advance hose lines. You need bodies. You can't do these things without bodies. You have rescue operations. You have primary searches. It's a very complex operation. And the reality is, the majority of Fall River, because of the closeness of the buildings, the construction, non-fire stopped wood frame buildings with balloon frame construction, the majority of Fall River can be considered a high hazard area. And learn something now and listen to me, for you people who are saying this and misrepresenting the thing. The required crew in a high hazard area is 5 people per apparatus. We have 3. Do the math. I mean, even with your binary math, it doesn't work. 5, 3. And I can tell you, in reality, and I'm not saying this to scare anybody, it's a fact. We had a fire years ago when I was the chief. Actually, I think it was one of your relatives, CJ.
Yes, it was.
And we had a 3-story wood frame building. It was fully involved. We arrived. A woman had thrown 2 babies out the window, and she disappeared behind a wall of flame. The stairway into the building was burnt out. The window that she disappeared behind, that she threw the babies out, was now covered with fire. We had to lay an attack line to hold the fire back while we put a ladder up to the building, and a man from rescue, whose father died in the line of duty, went in. He had about 2 minutes. I told him he had 2 minutes maximum to find her. He had to be out in 3 because we couldn't hold the fire back. We saved that woman. She was burnt severely. She went to the burn unit in Boston. She came back. Later, we attended a function for her, the Liberal Club. All the men who worked at that fire were thanked, but that's what we do. And it was one of the greatest moments of, that's what we do. And when you save somebody's life, it makes it all worthwhile. And you don't do it all the time. We were fortunate. However, I can say categorically, as someone who was a chief officer for 25 years, we would have never been able to save that woman with today's crews. We had 255 men. To say that this department is staffed and overstaffed with 153 men when we had one working house fire on Green Street and they had to call Freetown in to go to a brush fire at Kennedy Park is not only absurd, but it's virtually criminal to try to mislead the public that way. If you don't believe that this department is undermanned, you are more than a fool.
Well, and we talk about this a lot because, again, every time we have a fire call in Fall River, we have to have communities that surround us support us. And, if they have a fire, we usually go to support them, and they can't depend on that from us at this point. And now when we look at the King Philip Mill, which was a huge fight at yesterday's safety committee meeting, the EPA said they won't go in there and remove the hazardous material because the building's unsafe to be in. It's falling apart around them. The tower is unsafe. And we spent $55,000 on a fence to secure it, yet when I drove by it last night at 6:30, 6:45, there were people behind that fence picking up wood and materials that had been chopped down from the day crew. So, I mean, what are they doing? Stocking that wood up alongside the building and making it tinder? I hope not, but, you know, that's supposed to keep people out, but people were in there yesterday. And they're saying the tower is unsafe, so if the tower is unsafe, it's gonna fall on someone. Or it could fall on itself. Or if, God forbid, a fire, it's gonna fall down on our firefighters.
Well, you know, obviously, the King Philip Mill is a huge complex. It runs from Dwelly Street to Charles Street. That's a pretty long area if you're familiar with the South End. So, you know, that is a tremendously high hazard. It is a high hazard occupancy. It's an old mill, oil soaked floors. And the reality is, if we had a department that was fully staffed, you know, we could at least begin to evacuate and do things properly. But the fact is that now, we used to provide mutual aid because we were a larger department. We used to provide mutual aid even on first alarms at any working fire to Somerset, Tiverton, because at one time Somerset didn't have an aerial ladder, so if they had a high building, we had to send an aerial. We've sent units as far away as Newport for mutual aid. I was on duty one night when they called for mutual aid from Newport. We had to send an engine company to Newport for a fire. So we have always been able to send mutual aid and still protect the city. So anybody who tells you this city's department is staffed properly when a city of this size has to call towns like Somerset and Tiverton for mutual aid when we get any kind of fire of any consequence, I mean, let's face it. How much crap are you going to stack up, people?
You know, the thing that scares me more than anything else is that this budget created by this administration and previous budgets do not take the needs of the city into consideration. Fire services, police services, trash services are not taken into consideration by this budget. And the fiscal 2016 budget doesn't look much better at this point. Although they said, oh no, it's going to get better. We always hear that, but it never does. So you have to ask yourself, what's important to the sixth floor? Fire, police, and trash? Or $9,000 doors and $20,000 pay raises? I mean, what's more important?
Well, I think that's obvious, CJ. I mean, he has basically gone on record and said that it's the pay-as-you-throw that's going to fund public safety and trash pickup, which are, to me, essential services. And instead, our tax dollars are funding the law department, the neighborhood liaison, and all the pay raises that he's given out. So, you know, I think our priorities are upside down. That's one of the reasons for the recall. And another factor that people don't take into consideration, and like I said, I had 40,000 pages of statistics. When you reduce the number of men and you reduce the number of initial response men, there is an incredibly greater incidence of injuries. Injuries mean less people. Now you get people that are hurt, they're out for a month or two, they get injured at a fire, that costs overtime. It also reduces the available amount of men overall, and it's a vicious cycle. And I think that, you know, when they begin, look, if you want to say that you love the way this guy is governing, and you believe that the answer to everything is to raise taxes all the time, and we have to make a choice of always raising taxes or losing essential services rather than maybe streamlining government and not giving everybody in the world a $20,000 pay raise and creating all kinds of jobs for your cronies. If you want to say that's okay, go ahead. But please, for the people who are putting their life on the line, these firefighters and police officers go out every single day, and so do the DPW guys, in the rain and the sleet and the snow. They're out there every day doing their job. And firefighters and police officers take their job extremely seriously. And they're in harm's way many times, and they're going to go and try to save someone at the expense of their own safety.
And we've seen that all too often.
Yeah, we've seen that all too often. You know, I unfortunately had 5 men die in a line of duty while I served my 38 years on a job. And I attended the funerals, and I attended funerals all over the country as the president of the union. And it's to me, it's appalling that you would try to make that argument. When the chief of the fire department said he couldn't handle more than one fire in front of the city council, and now you're going to try to make that spin, leave public safety out of it, because it is, you are full of crap.
You know, and regardless of what a lot of people think, and regardless of what the mayor has said, these people are speaking for the mayor, whether they have permission or not. When petition collectors are out and they're getting attacked, petitions are being defaced, the police department can't or won't answer. When they're threatened to be stabbed in the neck by supporters. I mean, this creates havoc. This is the process of the people. But to digress a little bit on this, we faced several challenges over the past couple of days, past week. The Housing Authority says that politicians cannot go into the buildings, cannot go on Housing Authority property to collect signatures or to engage the people without an invite. That gets approved. But there's case law on this, and Chip and I have reviewed it over and over. We don't have a lot of time, so we've got to get this quickly. But that was Walker versus the Georgetown Housing Authority. And Chip, you had a nice little quote you love to say about from the Supreme Judicial Court, which ruled on this. And from what I understand, every lower court ruled in the same fashion. But yeah, David Sullivan thinks that, you know, we're Fall River, we don't need to do this.
Yeah, which is ironic, because it's actually more than case law. It's a Supreme Judicial Court opinion, which means that's it. It's done. It's no longer case law. It's the way it has to be, because this went through. It didn't even go to the appellate court. The SJC thought it was so important they pulled it right out and bypassed basically the appellate court. And so the only place this has left to go, if David Sullivan wants to contest this, is to the Supreme Court of the United States, which obviously will not overturn the Supreme Judicial Court of Massachusetts about what because it not only violates the United States Constitution in accordance with this legal finding. You know, it's not an opinion anymore. You know, basically it's the law. The Supreme Court decided, but it also violates Article 77 and Article 9 of the Massachusetts Declaration of Rights, our own state constitution. So, and I'm paraphrasing now because I don't have that opinion with me. It's in another briefcase. But basically what it said was that it ultimately becomes the right of the inhabitant to determine who he allows to enter his house. And it's also the right of the people, and it has been the right of the people since the beginning of this nation, to knock on doors and attempt to talk about politics or religion or any subject. So the ultimate right rests with the individual occupant of that dwelling, and no housing authority has the right to abrogate that with any kind of regulation, because that's exactly what the Georgetown Housing Authority tried to do. They tried to suppress people's right to act and take a political action. And that's what the Supreme Court says. So now David Sullivan feels that he has a right that supersedes the Constitution of the state. But because we're not looking for a fight, we are going to ask permission. And if he denies that permission, well, we are going to file complaints against him and the Fall River Housing Authority and litigate it if we have to. Seems
like there's going to be a lot of litigation. I mean, everyone's talking about, you know, the mayor has the right to be on the ballot. The mayor, you know, is going to run even if he's recalled. And I think what people are missing is, because they're saying they're going to split the ballot, there is no split ballot. The ballot on the recall, according to the law, says the ballot is in two parts. The first part says, and I'm quoting it, "Do you wish to recall Mayor William A. Flanagan? Yes or no?" If the yeses prevail, the second part of the ballot is then counted, which lists the candidates for mayor. The mayor is already on the ballot, therefore he can't put himself back on the ballot to be reconsidered because the predominant vote was, yes, you're recalled, you're out of here. If it's a no vote, the second part of the ballot never comes into play, so the mayor's retained. And that's what people don't seem to understand. It's one ballot in two parts, not two ballots. And the ballot is clear. Do you wish to recall Mayor William A. Flanagan? Yes or no? If yes prevails, the second part is counted. If no prevails, the ballot ends there, and the mayor is retained. You can't get it both ways, Mr. Mayor, and you can't get it both ways, supporters. So if you're recalled, Mr. Mayor, then a new mayor is elected.
Yeah, technically, he's already running for mayor. He's running on the recall.
Exactly.
So if the people want him to remain as mayor, they're going to vote to retain him as mayor, and then he's still the mayor. You can't say, well, if the people don't want me as mayor, I'm going to run for mayor again for the seat that I already hold on the same ballot, and then hope that there are so many candidates they split the vote and I can slide in on a technicality, which is absurd. You know, I mean, let's face it. Let's live by the will of the people. You know, we initiated this recall because we want to allow the people to speak, and we're going to have to live with the result. And if he retains his seat as mayor, well, so be it. We had our day. We got to voice our opinion, and we lost. So you know, that's the way it goes. So let's hope that the mayor does the same thing. You know, he has his opportunity to plead his case before the recall.
And lastly, we were asked on the radio yesterday if either of us planned to run for the office of mayor on the special election, and we both said no. And I'm going to say it explicitly again, because obviously there are people who comment in the Herald News and on Facebook who insist that I'm going to run for mayor. I have no intentions of putting my name on the ballot for mayor now for this special election. I have no political agenda. My agenda in this effect is to, and I will clearly state again for those of you who seem to not be able to hear or understand, I am not running for mayor. So if you can't understand that, please come by my home and I will write it out in crayon for you, and maybe you will understand it then. Because I'm telling you now, this is getting to be absolutely ridiculous.
Well, I guess that's what happens when you're in the forefront of things, and also you have run for political office. I never have, so just in case, I'm not. Yeah, so I have no political interest except getting rid of the mayor.
Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.
Have a great day.